I will quote my coach, Monica. She always says, and I've found this to be true, planning is the highest form of self-care. Because when you plan your week on a Sunday night or Monday morning, you're not waking up in the morning going, what am I going to do today? You have it planned out. You know you have a chunk of time dedicated to administrivia, projects, whatever. I always take the last week of the month off. I didn't always understand that, but now I do. You need the last week of the month to work on your business, not in it. If you're starting your business, track your time, see where your time is going, see what your patterns are. And if you notice you're getting distracted a lot, there's certainly methods of dealing with that we all know about. But even more important is noticing what works for you and working with yourself. Make your life easy. Your business doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Your structure needs to fit you, not the other way around.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. Before Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7 and 8 figure career coaching businesses myself and consulted with 2 career coaching businesses that are now doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or just building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to another episode of Career Coaching Secrets podcast. Today, my guest is Rahti Gorfien, a career and ADHD coach who has been helping professionals and creatives overcome obstacles and find fulfillment for over 30 years. As a professional certified coach and ADHD accredited coach, Rahti specializes in guiding artists, entrepreneurs, and neurodivergent individuals through career transitions, focus challenges, and personal growth. Her approach blends practical strategies with humor and compassion, empowering her clients to thrive. I'm excited to dive into her insights. Welcome to the show, Rahti. Tell me a little bit more about what inspired you to become a coach, either a career coach, life coach, ADHD coach.
Well, it was cumulative. Life is just cumulative. I mean, you don't sit up in your crib and go, I'm going to be an ADHD coach. I'm a theater artist. Originally, I wanted to be a star. I wanted to be on Broadway. And I was and in a way, it was great having that focus and that goal, even though it didn't take me where I thought I'd end up. The theater, the business broke my heart, frankly. And at a certain point, I moved into an ashram. And for your listeners who don't know what an ashram is, I think most of them probably do, but it's basically a Hindu kibbutz. All right. I couldn't hie me to a nunnery because, well, I'm not Catholic. I'm Jewish. I'm not even Christian. I had to reinvent myself, reparent myself by living in a spiritual community. And what I learned there was that company's stronger than will. In this culture, we're taught that you can have whatever you want. You can do and be whatever you want. But what is not added to that is if you have the right community around you and you have the right set of serendipitous happenings that occur, there's some luck involved, your station in life, privilege. I struggled a lot as a young actress thinking, I don't know why I'm not getting these auditions. And casting directors would say, well, you're a little too urban, which is showbiz speak for Jewish or Black or any other ethnicity that's not like mainstream. And I didn't have the emotional tools to weather the business. Getting back to the ashram, living in community taught me that company is stronger than will, and you don't do anything worthwhile alone. So when I got back to the city after being, well, I like to say I was one of the few people kicked out of a cult because, it was a situation with a guru and it was a celibate community, and we called each other brother and sister, and it was all about surrendering your ego. And if you left the community, it meant you were copping out on your spiritual growth. And so I was in such a conflicted space that I started acting out a lot. I emptied a bucket of zucchini on a woman's head at one point. I worked in the kitchen, which literally was a pressure cooker because no sex, drugs, or rock and roll. All you got is food. And people took their food very seriously. Anyway, fast forward, the guru said you should take a leave of absence. What a gift. Thank God. Anyway, I came back with that message, company stronger than will. And I started creating support systems using books like Wishcraft by Barbara Sher. A lot of your coaches, your audience are coaches. They probably know about Barbara Sher and Wishcraft. She, to my mind, is the mother of coaching. Then also The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And as a theater artist, I went through that book 4 times, 3 times with groups that I surrounded myself with. And I started creating my own work. And I started seeing other people succeed at things who were in my support groups. And at a certain point, I met my husband. He was a stand-up comic, and I was a stand-up comic. We met at a club. And at one point, he said, you should start charging for this. And I didn't know what this was. It was the early 90s, and I was getting really burnt out on hostessing at restaurants and cleaning people's houses. You got to do a lot of things to survive in the business. So I discovered that it was called coaching. It was a new industry, and I started doing it and put my shingle out. And I believe we always start coaching ourselves. So I coached a lot of artists originally, and I sent a lot of artists into therapy because I kept hitting a wall, not knowing how to help them, which is when I decided to get training and I became certified. I decided to go to the ADHD Coach Academy because one of my relatives is diagnosed with ADHD and my son has it, my husband has it. And I thought, well, if I could coach people with ADHD, I can coach anybody. That was my thought. And it was great because it aligned perfectly with my tribe. A lot of artists, a lot of creatives, a lot of entrepreneurs have ADHD because they need to make up their own rules to succeed. So it was very well aligned. I don't like to say that all artists have it because they don't, but many, many, many of them do. And so at cocktail parties, I like to say I coach creative professionals who feel pulled in 50 directions, focus, so they can grab the focus of others, get seen, and make money doing what they love. And it's great because there's so many transferable skills between being a theater artist, a playwright, an actor, a comic, and being a coach. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to help people shape their narrative and reframe things. So I feel as though this is what I was meant to do. And it was a long way around finding it, but here I am.
Well, that was a great story and very detailed, actually. It's almost like you were explaining the complete cycle of your life for a moment.
I became a coach, and I said, well, this is the journey. And I don't think any coach you're going to talk to who doesn't have a journey, who doesn't have something they've had to figure out and work out for themselves.
Mm-hmm. So initially we're working with artists. And actually, before we get to that, can you tell me a little bit more about your journey after you became a coach to where you are at today?
Yes, good question. Well, I became a coach and I was muddling about. I took a training in creativity coaching with Eric Maisel, who was with Julia Cameron, probably the premier creativity coach in the industry. And he wasn't, it was great, but it wasn't an ICF accredited training. And the International Coach Federation, as many of your listeners I think will agree, is the regulating body of the coaching industry. So it helped me somewhat. However, I wasn't feeling very secure. And as I said, I was still sending people to therapy a lot, which is not to say that that isn't appropriate. It often is. But I couldn't distinguish between where I didn't know how to help them and where they needed to be in therapy. So I got the ICF accredited training And that elevated me, and I was able to get my business to the 19K mark. I was making about 19,000 a year. You can't live on that in New York City, and you certainly can't raise a kid on that. And my husband is also. I'm not. If you're fortunate enough to marry someone who is neurotypical, has a 9 to 5 job, and it makes a good income, great. But my husband also is a comedian, an artist. He has ADHD. He runs his own business. We didn't have stability. So I had to figure out a way to build my revenue. And when I was ready, I used to say, when the disciple's ready, the guru appears. Well, when the mentee, the coach mentee is ready, the mentor coach appears. And I met Monica Shaw of Revenue Breakthrough. I went to a 3-day workshop of hers, and it blew me away. And I did something that at first my husband wanted to kill me for, which was put $9,000 on a credit card to work with her. But that's what I needed to do to get the tools to really understand what it was to treat my business like a business instead of a hobby. And she took me to 6 figures. She took me to $100,000 working with her. And that was, but it took a few years. It did. I met her in 2016, and my best year was 2021. That was my highest income year.
So basically, that investment worked well for you, and it actually served the purpose.
Oh, yes. Yes. And, you do have to be discerning, I think. And I think it's gotten dicey because now there are so many coaches who are coaching coaches and turning out more coaches who are coaching coaches that it can be a little cannibalistic.
Mhm.
And you really have to vet people if you're going to invest in their trainings, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that most coaches actually do still receive coaching. And if you manage to find someone that you feel that is right investment, in your case, you did the right one, totally go for it. And did that get you to stability after that point?
Oh yeah, we were much better off. I mean, my kid didn't incur any debt going to college. And what's nice is also when you're in a bohemian type marriage like ours, when somebody's income is down, hopefully the other's is up. And that's what happened. My husband was having a rough time with the pandemic and everything. He has a brick and mortar bookshop, and my income went up, and that saved our butts. And, it has shifted a little. Now he's doing better than me. And I'm, catching up again. So, yeah, it really has worked out. It's worked out well.
Thanks for sharing it. I wanted to ask also a marketing question now. Where do you find your clients? What is the main marketing channel that's working out for you in terms of finding your ideal client persona?
I know a lot of people will say speaking, but for me, it's been the internet straight up. For some reason, in the first few years of my business after starting to work with Monica, 95% of my business came through Yelp. Now that's shifted. Yelp has kind of dried up, but I've really put energy into my Google profile, and still people are finding me online. I do have a marketing system. I do social media a couple times a week. I do reels a couple times a week. I send a newsletter out 3 times a month. I do have a marketing system. I've gotten clients through that. So I would say for me, that's been secondary to just having the right keywords, having people, be able to find me.
And when it comes to online, when you say the newsletter, also mentioned doing reels, what platform online has been most successful? Is it LinkedIn? When you say reels, is it YouTube reels?
When I do TikTok, I do Instagram. I'm getting more and more active on LinkedIn, and I'm finding really nice collaborations through that. I also have a networking group that I founded after joining a 6 and 7 figure business owner networking group, and realizing I wasn't going to get referrals there because, unlike everybody else, I coach artists, I coach creatives, and they were all trying to sell me. I was being pitched to all the time. I started my own networking group called Muse, which is for professionals who serve creatives. So I had a comedy coach for a long time. I have an IP attorney. I have a bookkeeper. I have people in the visual arts who coach visual artists to sell their work, and that has, we can pass referrals. We can help each other. That's been a better use of strategic networking for me, founding that group. And I'm happy to talk to people if they're interested in it. I think, did I answer your question or am I rambling?
Yeah, that does answer the question. And for anyone who wants to know more about this network, where can they find it if they wanted to?
They can find it through my website. That's the safest. The drop-down menu, Muse Networking. You'll get it from under services.
So it's not a public community per se. People would have to join through you, right? It's a paid community.
They have to join through me. There's an intake process. It's really inexpensive. It's $35 a month now is what I'm charging. And or you can pay in full for the year and then you save a few money. You save a few ducats, $400 for the year. But I have to vet people. I can't have people who are all about me. And I did a TED Talk and I'm so great, because it's really about relationships first, cultivating trust and relationships. So it's not a group for narcissists. It's, it's for very authentic, heart-centered people. So I have to talk to you, schedule a conversation with me. And the way to do that is meetrahti.com and choose the Muse option. But that's where you can schedule a conversation. That's not where you're going to learn about the network.
Great. So the next question I have for you is, what are your future goals or any future goals you're working towards for the next 1 to 3 years?
Well, I'm of a certain age and I'm looking towards what I want to retire to. I don't imagine myself ever retiring. I mean, if you play your cards the way I did, there's no 401k or anything. So I want to retire to a residential retreat center. I see myself living in a big, beautiful painted lady with a wraparound porch. And I love artists to come, creatives to come who need time to do their work. And I will be on call there by appointment, of course, not at people's beck. But, I will be available to coach, do creativity coaching, focus coaching, which AKA ADHD coaching, organizational coaching, tarot card readings, theta healings, whatever they need to get their work, their creative work, to the next level. And a very wise woman who works at SCORE, she said, why don't you try it out first and see if you like it? What an idea. I hadn't thought of that, right? For the moment, I created this. Again, I'll share it with you, and maybe your people on YouTube will see it. I have set up a trial retreat. I have a friend who owns a beautiful farmhouse and lodge upstate New York. And so it's going to be the weekend after Memorial Day. Here's some beautiful pictures of where you will stay. Lovely place. That's the longhouse where most of the rooms are. This is the environment. And it's really about, stop the world and reclaim your creative focus. Now, I said tuition required because Eventbrite's a little dicey. It doesn't let you. It says free, it's not free, because you have, again, I don't want just anybody coming to this retreat. I can't have strangers showing up there and I have to live with them for 4 days. So yeah, there's an intake process. I want everyone to be safe. But this is going to be this is my experiment. So folks can go to Eventbrite and, find this. Now, we're going to segue to a conversation of transparency. The reason I did this on Eventbrite is because for the moment I've furloughed my team. My business has been a little slow. honestly. And at a certain point, I was, you can't have a negative profit margin because then you're cosplaying and having a business. So right now, I'm doing a lot of my own administrivia, including setting up this Eventbrite page. Things are starting to pick up, but I'm still doing a lot on my own. So my advice to beginner coaches especially is, yeah, you can get yourself to 6 figures. That's great. But what people won't tell you sometimes is that it takes 6 figures to make 6 figures. You're not going to necessarily be making a living yet, even if you can say you're bringing in 6 figures. And it doesn't just stay there. With the best marketing systems in the world, even, and you do have to always be marketing because you'll have a full roster and then all of a sudden it starts dropping off. You've got to have pipeline, you've got people in the pipeline. The world at large doesn't always cooperate. Things change. We get pandemics, we get elections, we get the stock market plummeting, we get all kinds of things that happen that are not your fault. And I think there's a lot of spiritual bypassing in the coaching industry that just makes people feel bad if they're not happy and successful all the time. There's nothing wrong with you if you sometimes have to do the work you're not brilliant at, like setting up an Eventbrite page, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably, I'm going to go to Fiverr. I'm going to hire somebody because I also have it on my website. But quite frankly, it's, I tinkered around. It doesn't look great on my website. I can handle Eventbrite. I can't handle updating my website. So I'm going to hire someone on a project basis for that,
Mm-hmm.
right? If
Yeah.
you're spending more than an hour and a half doing something, you probably shouldn't be doing it. That you might want to look for some help, But I really appreciate you letting me talk about this, and I hope it'll be part of the podcast.
You're welcome. That's what I asked you in terms of like the goals. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I also wanted to ask you about what resources or support has been most valuable in you growing your business. You did mention a coach, which you paid initially when you were starting. Apart
And I
from that,
still work with her to the degree that I can. And I worked with her privately. I've worked in her group program. Right now I'm part of her Soul Speak business collective, which is very woo. I stay aligned with her because I do believe you need a coach. You need a coach, however you can, and she's a smart lady. She's starting to launch a lot of less expensive programs for shorter time commitments because that's what people feel secure enough to do right now.
and apart from her, what other investments have you seen that have been supportive in you growing your business?
Well, yeah, being flexible, that's supportive, right? I have my rates, but I needed to get creative and be willing in this climate, especially with the demographic I coach, to offer partial scholarships. And I even bartered with one client, and the exchange was that he would introduce me, do like email introductions to like 4 other artists who he thought could use my services. And I ended up booking one of them and giving them a partial scholarship. And so now I'm working with them. So you can use your alumni clients. That's been very valuable. Referrals. Get comfortable with asking for testimonials because that's your social proof. That's the other thing that's buoyed my business. You go to Yelp, you'll see I have a lot of nice testimonials, and people feel comfortable contacting you when they see that.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, testimonials are very important to showcase that they can trust in your work. I wanted to ask you also, and you probably may have mentioned it already, but what is something that you wish you had known when you first started scaling your coaching business? What is like one unexpected lesson learned?
That nothing lasts forever. That the one thing you can count on is change, is impermanence. I had a full practice for many years and I got cocky and I thought, oh, it's always going to be that way. And all of a sudden it wasn't after the pandemic. And I had to go through a period of feeling like it was my fault. Maybe I'm being shadow banned. And then realize, no, you're not, it's a little grandiose to think that everything's within your power. So what I wish I had understood was that line between grandiosity and responsibility. Doesn't mean, it's not either you're a victim of circumstance or everything's within your control. What's true is nothing stays the same. So that's why I'm so big on staying in the moment, staying present, staying flexible with circumstances. So in my old age, I finally learned that one. But as a coach, I think it's a great thing to know.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. Being aware that change is consistently going to come is, I think, very important, and that things don't stay the same. I also wanted to ask you, because there's a lot of experience here. How do you currently handle the balance between delivering great results to your clients and, on the other side, managing business operation?
I'm very organized. I wasn't always that way, but you have to plan. Planning, I will quote my coach, Monica. She always says, and I've found this to be true, planning is the highest form of self-care. Because when you plan your week on a Sunday night or Monday morning, you're not waking up in the morning going, what am I going to do today? You have it planned out. You have a chunk of time dedicated to administrivia, projects, whatever. I always take the last week of the month off. I didn't always understand that, but now I do. You need the last week of the month to work on your business, not in it. So, and that works for me, right? I have days where I don't book clients. For a while, it was Tuesday afternoons. I wasn't talking to anybody on Tuesday afternoons because I was working on my business. I still do what Monica calls Money Mondays. Money Mondays are for meetings, errands, looking at my finances, looking at my numbers, which is very important. And I don't schedule things on Friday afternoon. I don't schedule things past my last appointment's at 6 o'clock. For me, I need to stop after that. You're not going to get good results if you're working with me at 8 o'clock at night. It's just not going to be work. I actually have a couple of coaching slots on Saturday at 11 and 12. So if someone's full time and they want, I'm going to be fresh. They're not going to feel pressured. So I love coaching on Saturday morning. If you're starting your business, track your time, see where your time is going, see what your patterns are. And, if you notice you're getting distracted a lot, there's certainly methods of dealing with that we all know about. But even more important is noticing what works for you and working with yourself. Make your life easy. Your business doesn't have to look like anybody else's. Your structure needs to fit you, not the other way around.
Yeah, I really like that. So making sure to plan ahead, block certain times for the business operation side. And yeah, that's very helpful. I wanted to ask another question, which might be related to this, is what aspects of running your coaching business in quotation would keep you up at night?
Oh, well, when I go through a fallow period, when people aren't booking consultations, oh my God, where's the money going to come from? This person paid in full and I spent it already. That's a real trap. Be careful. If you get people to pay in full, great, because they're highly committed. And try not to debt to yourself, right? I know some coaches who will only take monthly payments because they don't want to end up doing that to themselves. But sure, if you don't have clients in the pipeline, if you don't have consultations line up, that can keep you up at night.
Yeah, lead generation, I think a lot of people are going to resonate with that because most coaches do face an issue with lead generation. And even if you don't, just like you said earlier, things can change. So things do change. What advice would you give to in this case, the community is going to be career coaches, other career coaches looking to scale their impact?
Just stick around and stay visible. And I would say also, don't just take shots at things. Don't do a webinar once and decide it doesn't work for you, because it's a skill. There's a learning curve. The conventional wisdom, and I do believe this, is that do something for 60 to 90 days and see what your results are to decide whether or not it's going to be working for you. It is really, I think, about that kind of discipline.
So don't take short shots. Try it for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
Be consistent and see how it goes. Thanks very much, Rahti. This has been very helpful for anyone who wants to find you or wants to connect with you after watching this podcast. They can even find you on your LinkedIn, Rahti Gorfien, or they could also go into the website, creativecallingcoaching.com, or also go into the Muse network and maybe book a chat there if they
Sure,
want to
and
connect
also
with you.
Linktree. I love Linktree because it has all things Rahti on it. So it's Linktree/Coach Rahti. That's all things Coach Rahti.
Thanks for sharing, Rahti. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast today.
It was lovely talking with you and spending time with you too.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This conversation was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to 7 and 8 figures without burning out. To learn more about Purple Circle, our community, and how we can help you grow your business, visit joinpurplecircle.com.